Hello, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar, where we'll hear from shoal partners and friends based out in India's incredible Western Ghats biodiversity hotspot. Sanjay, Rajeev, and Arjun live in Kerala and Tamil Nadu in India's lush southwest, where monkeys swing freely from the trees, elephants roam through the forest, hundreds of colorful species of birds fly, leopards and tigers prowl in the national parks, and fish species, many of them well known to the global aquarium hobby, swim in the many mighty rivers there. It is, I can say from experience, an intensely beautiful region, absolutely brimming with biodiversity. A quick introduction to our panel. Dr. Rajeev Raghavan is an assistant professor at the Kerala University of Fisheries and Ocean Studies and the South Asia chair of the IUCN Freshwater Fish Specialist Group. Rajiv's research focuses on the broad theme of aquatic conservation, and he works on multiple disciplines, including systematics, molecular ecology, biodiversity assessments, and conservation policies. His research group has been in the forefront of documenting aquatic biodiversity on the Indian subcontinent, and he has described 24 new species, 5 new genera, and 2 new families of aquatic organisms. In July 2023, Rajeev was awarded the Fisheries Society of British Isles Medal 2023 for his exceptional contributions to fish biology and fisheries science, becoming the first and only awardee to today from the Asian continent. Dr. Sanjay Molur is a career conservationist and has spent 32 years learning the ways to implement successful conservation actions on the ground, from freshwater to terrestrial, for lesser known species and ecosystems, mixing various aspects including social, behavioral, community, policy, governance, education, publication, capacity building, training, outreach, livelihoods, and everything that is driven emotionally in society, but based very much on science for objective and real solutions. He is the executive director of the 40-year-old Zoo Outreach Organization, building conservation bridges across people, organizations, and issues. Zoo Outreach are the shoal local action partner taking the lead on conserving the endangered Denison's barb, a stunning little fish that I'm sure will be familiar to most, if not all, the people on this call and to everybody in the aquarium hobby. Through the Save the Denise's Friends project that Shoal launched in 2022 and which was supported by funding that aquarists in the UK kindly donated via a fundraising campaign in Practical Fish Keeping magazine. Joining Rajeev and Sanjay in the panel is Arjun CP, a conservation biologist at the Central Forest Circle at the Kerala Forests and Wildlife Department. His primary focus is on resolving tensions in human-animal interfaces. He works with Dr. Rajeev and his team to establish citizen science networks across Kerala to study subterranean fishes and to engage with local communities, transforming them into citizens conservators. We were supposed to be joined by Remya Sundar today, but unfortunately she was unable to make it. And for those who've not come across Rajeev, Sanjay, and Arjun before, which is hard to believe in the world of freshwater fish research, they really are absolute experts in their field, and we're very fortunate to be joined by them. Some very quick housekeeping. Today's webinar will last between an hour and up to 2 hours, depending on the length of the presentations and the panel discussion and question and answer session at the end. We'll be moderating the chat, so please feel free to say hi, introduce yourself, and let us know where in the world you're joining us from, and keep your questions coming in throughout the talks, and we'll get to as many of them as we possibly can at the end of the session. The session is being recorded, and we'll upload it to Shoal's YouTube channel and website, so if you'd like to rewatch it, or if you know of anybody who was hoping to watch but couldn't make it, you'll be able to find it online from tomorrow or the day after at youtube.com/@shoal_org, or go to the Shoal website, shoalconservation.org, click the news and stories, and then the videos. Rajeev, it is over to you. I'm just going to pull up your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike, for the introduction and for the invitation to this webinar. Yeah. So do you mind if I switch off my video just in case the internet line is slow?
Sorry, no, that's absolutely fine. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. So hello everyone. I'm going to talk about a peculiar and unique component of southern India's or Western Ghats. Not you know really Western Ghats mountains, but a landscape that is between the sea, the Arabian Sea, and the Western Ghats. So it's basically the coastal plains of southern peninsular India that I'm going to talk about, and introduce you to a very peculiar assemblage of fish that is found nowhere else on this planet. Yeah. So can I go to the next slide, please, Mike? Yeah, so we all know that freshwater fish are very important from a biodiversity point of view, especially from the vertebrate diversity point of view. 25% of our planet's vertebrates are contributed by freshwater fish, and they contribute in different ways as food, as aquarium pets. They do lots of other ecosystem services like larval control. They're also a component in the sport and recreational fishery, etc. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we have what is known as the freshwater paradox. That is when you compare the number of fish species that are seen in freshwater versus marine systems. And if you look at the area that is available on the planet with regard to freshwater and marine ecosystems, you can see that almost 50% of the world's freshwater fish, 50% of the world's fish fauna live in less than 3% of the water on Earth, whereas the 50% or close to 50% of the marine fish fauna live in 97% of the area of Earth. So it's basically a very little area that is available for freshwater fish to survive and grow on this planet. And that makes freshwater fish one of the most threatened or imperiled group of vertebrates. So next slide. So I'm going to talk about, as I said, not on the fishes that you find commonly in surface water environments like rivers, lakes, ponds, wetlands, etc. So those are the most common types of habitats that all the participants here would relate to, or where you can see or where you have seen fish hanging out. But this is another very different kind of environment that is under the ground where we all are. It's the subterranean or the groundwater systems. And these groundwater systems are not, they are very important in the fact that they contribute almost 30% of all the available freshwater on the planet. So they're very critical ecosystem. Yeah, so it's we have a very dark, invisible ocean beneath where we stand. So it's beneath our feet. There is an extensive, habitat of water that is not really, documented, not really known to science. Next slide. And these environments are characterized by all of these things. So there's very little light, very limited light and oxygen. So which makes life very difficult in these environments. So it's a very difficult environment to survive in. Uh, the very narrow spaces where you find places to move is very difficult. Then there's very little food availability because there is no light and oxygen. So basically, you don't get much of productivity there. So this makes groundwater and subterranean systems very harsh environments, very difficult environments to live in. It's like yeah, so as I said, they are very highly stressful environments with very little food, very little light, and that makes it difficult. So one would wonder what kind of animals would survive in these kind of environments. Next slide. Yeah, so basically, the most of the people would just keep guessing that there are small invertebrates, amphipods, isopods, shrimps, all those kinds of small crustaceans and insects that would call these environments their home. But next slide, please. But there's a whole lot of biodiversity. So if you look at this slide, so it shows that the biodiversity in groundwater and subterranean environments is as biodiverse as you find on the surface, because you have all kinds of animals that live there, right from vertebrates to arachnids, crustaceans, even lower forms like fungi, bacteria, viruses. All of these live in these kinds of environments. So lots of critters in these groundwater systems. Next slide. And I'm just going to introduce you to some of the most fascinating groundwater animals around the world. So this is the blind salamander found in the European continent, mostly in Slovakia, Croatia, and so on. So it's a blind aquatic salamander, which is famous around the world. It's become very popular because it's a species that seldom moves. So this for example, this species sat still for almost 7 years of its life, so without moving. So basically, just stays at one place. So it's a very fascinating animal. Next slide, please. So you have other fascinating creatures like this blind southern cave crayfish from the US. Next slide. Yeah, another salamander from the US, a Texas blind salamander, where you can see the gills are basically on the external surface of the body. So all of these animals come with very weird morphologies, very weird physiological characters, and so on. Next slide. Yeah, so this is India's own unique fossorial amphibian, which is one of the most charismatic amphibians that has been discovered from any part of India. Next slide, please. So coming to fish, groundwater fish. So if you look at the literature, so there's lots of definitions or lots of terminologies that have been used for fish that live under the ground. So basically in groundwater systems or subterranean systems. So they're either called groundwater fish. They're sometimes called subterranean fish. So they're also called cave fish. So all of these fish are basically those that live in the systems that are under the ground or in systems that are very dark, food scarce environments. And so very recently, last year, there was even an asteroid named as cavefish. So it was done by an American scientist. So basically, this was to create a sense of attention, a sense of popularity for cavefish around the world. Next slide. Yeah, so this is a sort of a snapshot of the diversity of groundwater and subterranean fish that live in different parts of the world. Next slide. Yeah, we have around more than 300 species of fish that live under the ground, which are almost 90% of all the vertebrate fauna that are found in subterranean groundwater systems. Next slide. Yeah, some quick examples. This is a Chinese, cavefish, one of the most photographed subterranean fish in the world. Next slide, please. A very bizarre-looking blind eel from Australia. Next slide, please. Another fish with a very strange name is called Satan eurystomus, an aquifer-dwelling catfish from Texas in the US. Next slide. Yeah, this one is a waterfowl climbing cave loach from Thailand. Next slide. Yeah, so if you look at the history of subterranean and groundwater fish research, so it goes all the way to 1436 when these kinds of very weird cave fish were documented in South Yunnan in China. And then the first cave fish to be scientifically described was from the US in 1842, Amblyopsis splaea. And then if you look at, for those who have read The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, there's a full section that Darwin has devoted in his book to cavefish. So he calls them the wrecks of ancient life because of its very bizarre adaptations, bizarre morphological characters that it has. Next slide. So what makes these fish special? So if one were to look at these fish, they look very different from any other normal fish that you find in rivers, lakes, even the marine systems, ponds, anywhere on the surface. So there are two kinds of things. One is they have reduced characters, like for example, many of these fish do not have eyes, they do not have body pigments. And some of these fish have very advanced characters or progressive characters, like their barbels or the fins would be more developed than the normal looking fish. So very huge or very long barbels, very long fin rays, etc. But there are also other characters like very low metabolic rates. So these fish can starve for months or years together without having any issues with their survival. They all are very small. So an average of between 2 to 10, 2 to 13 centimeters, and the largest one, largest scale fish on the planet is at 43 centimeters. So that's an exception, but otherwise it's between 2 to 13. Their eggs are very large, but they produce very small number of eggs, or less number of eggs compared to normal fish. Very slow to grow, and they grow for they live for a very long time. So these are the characters that makes these fish special. Next slide, please. Where do these fish occur, or where can you find these kind of fish on Earth? So China is the hotspot of subterranean fish diversity. So the largest, the greatest number of species are found in China, followed by countries like Brazil, India, Mexico, etc. Next slide. Yeah, so where do these fish live? So they live in two different kinds of layers. One is the groundwater layer, you can see on the slide, and then a slightly deeper layer known as aquifers. So these are the two different layers, in which these fish live. Next slide. Yeah, so coming to the southern Indian landscape, or the landscape that I introduced and even Mike spoke about. So there is this very long area just beneath the Western Ghats Mountains and between the Arabian Sea and the Western Ghats Mountains, where you find these fascinating fish. And although these fish were known in the literature since the 1950s, they were extremely rare. They were collected very infrequently. They were poorly known in the literature. Very less number of scientific publications on these fish, and all what was known was through these very difficult to guess black and white illustrations. Next slide. So this was what was there when we started to work on these kinds of fish. So where do these fish occur? So in this landscape here in southern India, we have a landscape that is filled with lateritic aquifers. So laterite rocks are these kinds of rocks which are porous. So you can see very small holes in them, miniature pores, and these are basically rocks and soil types that are found across the coastal plains, the midland coastal plains of southern peninsular India. And this is where these interesting fish live. So these fish pass through these holes, small porous openings, and then they travel from one aquifer to the other, one well to the other, etc. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is where geographically the area is. So you can see the red colored layer that runs all the way from the southern tip of India in the state of Kerala to the northern part of Kerala. So that the red colored band that goes across the state is where you find lateritic rocks. So this is where you get these kinds of very interesting fish. Next slide, please. So how do you find these fish that are out of sight? So basically, if one were to look at surface water fish like rivers, lakes, ponds, wetlands, etc., you can always go to these habitats, dip a net or throw a net and get these fish. But how do you find a fish that is out of sight? So we don't know what happens under the ground. There's no way to access these systems. So it's basically serendipity. So that is the whole concept of finding subterranean or groundwater fish. You have to be extremely lucky. You have to be in the right place at the right time to get these fish. Next slide, please. Yeah. So some of the habitats where you get these fish are dugout wells. So plenty of dugout wells in this landscape. So every household in a village would have these kinds of dugout wells. Next slide, please. These fish also pop out through bore wells in the landscape. So there's another way in which you can get these fish. Then if you look at areas like this, so this is a wetland, and where there is also a new well that is being dug up. So there are also landscape like this where you can get the fish. Yeah, that's fine. And then you have open wetlands like this where these fish can sometimes pop up. Next slide, please. Yeah, these small agricultural fields and plantations, small water channels in these agro-based plantations. Next slide, please. Small garden channels and pools in the backyard of rural houses. Yeah, so these are the habitats where you can find these fish. Although they do not live there, they keep migrating from within or beneath the groundwater systems. They come up to these sort of surface water systems sometimes. There are some species that are fossorial, which dig into the mud and come up to feed or something. There are also other fish that keep migrating between the groundwater and surface layers. There are also fish that are completely groundwater. So there are different kinds of species. So we started to study these fossorial and groundwater fish through an international multi-institutional collaborative project from 2017. And as I showed you in one of my previous slides, when we started this work, all that was available to us were these black and white illustrations of some of these fish, and also some locations from where these fish were found during the last 50, 60 years. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we knew that it's not easy to get these fish because they are, as I said, they're completely in an inaccessible environment where it's difficult to go and look for fish. So we knew that to find the fish, we need people who knew the fish or people who knew about the fish. So to find the fish, we need we basically we were required to find the right people in the sense people who were connected to this fish, people who had observed these fish. For example, there is this peculiar community or a special community of people in the state who are involved in cleaning dugout wells and also digging up new wells. So this is a community of people that we keep working with because they always tell us that they find these fish while cleaning wells or when they dig up new wells. So we collaborate or we work strongly with this group of people. And so the image on the far right is when a well is being cleaned during summer. And so we have this net that is connected to the pump that takes out water from these wells. And this is also an interesting way where you can find these fish. Next slide. So citizen science and outreach is extremely important for this kind of study. Basically, as I said, because it's mostly the people who, or the villagers, the local communities, the common public who actually encounter these fish more than the scientists. And so almost 99% of all of the occurrence records, or almost 99% of all of the data or the information that we have, or the specimens that we have collected, they've all come from the common public thanks to their involvement in the study. So we keep conducting a lot of awareness workshops, classes, educational classes, campaigns, all of this to basically connect the common public to our project, to our study. Next slide. Yeah, so also students, because there are always lots of students who have seen this fish in their wells, in their backyards, in their channels. And there are also lots of examples that we know of students who have been keeping these fish without knowing its evolutionary importance or its the importance of these groundwater fish. For them, it's just a normal fish. So we keep engaging with the students as part of this project because they give us a lot of interesting information on these fish. Next slide. Yeah, so we've also done a lot of education materials, posters, pamphlets, flyers. All of these kinds of things are very basis of outreach, events and programs. So we have all our posters on different government offices, nature clubs, schools, colleges, all around the place. Just to make sure that people are aware of these kinds of fish, where they are found, what to do when they come in contact with such a fish, etc. So all of the basic protocols, the SOPs are all in different posters, which we've stuck up on all of these offices. Next slide, please. So there's also the other source of information that we have, or that we've used for our studies, that comes from the mainstream print and visual media. There's lots of newspaper reports, lots of reports in television channels, on YouTube, channels, etc. On when such a fish is encountered, or when local people, actually villagers, actually collect this fish without knowing what these organisms are. They keep giving the news to media. So we also get lots of information on the occurrence of these species from the media. So same way, next slide, please. So in addition to print and visual media, we also have social media where we've mined a lot of information. We've extracted a lot of information from social media and outlets like Facebook, from Instagram, etc. Twitter is not so popular. So it's basically Facebook and Instagram that has lots of images, videos, and all of this about these fish. So that's another interesting source of information for our study. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the power of citizen science and public engagement, although I've worked on freshwater fish for the past 20-25 years, it's only when we started this project that we knew how important, how strong involving local communities, common public is in understanding freshwater biodiversity. Because otherwise, to study a surface water environment, it just takes a few scientists or research students or researchers to go there and catch fish. But here is a system where you are totally dependent, entirely dependent on the power of the common public, citizen science, public engagement, outreach. So it is a whole new dimension to our research. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that's Arjun, who's on this panel. So daring stunts inside very small caves. He's also entering when entered into a well there on the left. Also small crevices, small areas inside caves where we look out for these interesting kinds of fish. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Sorry, did I break?
Next slide again.
Yeah, that's fine. No. Can you just go back to these? Mike, am I still audible or?
Yeah, well, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, can you just go back to the slide where yes. So I was just talking about these kinds of surveys that are required for understanding these kinds of fish, because it's completely unconventional kind of research that we do. So all the citizen science outreach campaigns, all of those kind of things, plus very difficult to approach and very difficult to access terrains and landscapes where you require completely different approach to collect this fish. Next slide, please. So once we have this fish, we do a lot of before that. So all of this fish, as I said in one of my initial slides, they all come with very bizarre morphology and anatomy. So they have, as I said, lots of characters that make them very unique. They don't have eyes sometimes. They don't have fins. So here you can see the fish in the middle does not have the dorsal fin. The same way the red colored fish on the bottom left, so it does not have an eye. So they're all coming with extremely difficult to understand morphology and life history. Next slide, please. So even when you look at the anatomy, so we use advanced anatomical tools thanks to our collaborators from the museums in Europe, basically in Germany. So we use micro and nano CT scans. So this was a project that Arjun was involved in, where he went to Germany and looked at the anatomy of all of these kinds of bizarre fish. So we also use all of these anatomical tools to understand their taxonomy, their systematics, their phylogenetic position, and so on. Next slide, please. We've also started to use advanced molecular approaches like environmental DNA, because this is one of the most most interesting, yet an approach that is perfect for understanding subterranean groundwater fish. So basically, these are organisms that we cannot see. So by just looking at the water sample, you can identify what kind of species are found in these environments, at least a known species. So this is a technique that we use to map the distribution of these kinds of interesting fish. And students and researchers have been trained in environmental DNA from some of the top institutions of the world. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is another slide that shows how we integrate different approaches to understand the taxonomy, systematics, and so on. So we have high definition anatomical tools, genetics, molecular information. So we integrate all of this: morphology, anatomy, genetics, to come up with compelling evidence to understand different aspects of their taxonomy. Next slide, please. So just a few examples of the interesting subterranean fish that we have described. So one of this is a bizarre fish that was caught from or collected from a roadside paddy field, in northern Kerala. Next slide, please. So it turned out to be a completely new species, a new genus, and a new family of freshwater fish. So this was named the golem snakehead. So next slide, please. Yeah, so a few photos of this. So this was also not only collected from paddy fields, but also collected from deep lateritic wells. So which shows that these fish are subterranean in nature. So they do inhabit these wells, but keep migrating into these surface or semi-surface environments, possibly to feed. We don't know why it comes to these environments, but maybe to feed, maybe to fulfill some other ecological or life history requirement. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this was the paper where we described this new genus and species of a snakehead-like fish, a very bizarre-looking fish that looks like a dragon, and so it's either called the golem snakehead or the dragon snakehead. Next slide, please. So this received a lot of media attention, popularity, because this was for the first time that a snakehead fish or a snakehead-like fish was discovered or described from a subterranean or a groundwater system. So until then, snakeheads or snakehead-like fishes were associated with surface water bodies like wetlands, rivers, lakes, etc. So this was the first ever example of a fish, belonging to the snakehead groups that were described from under the ground or from groundwater systems. Next slide, please. Yeah. So first we described the species and the genus as new, but then we also, while performing advanced anatomical studies, we also understood that this was much more than that, just not a species or a genus, but indeed a new family. So we had to give it a new family name. So it's now called Enigma chanidae. So it's the only species within that family. So that makes it evolutionarily very unique. So and a very old lineage. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as I said, lots of media attention, lots of popularity on this fish, basically because of its strange appearance, the strange habitat, the groundwater habitat, and also for the fact that, as I said, never before was a snakehead fish described from a subterranean environment. So all this made this fish very unique. Next slide. So we also had National Geographic covering this, discoveries, says a strange new underground fish discovered in India. So this was all over the media, just not in India, but also around the world. Next slide, please. The next one is an elusive blind catfish of the genus Horoglanus. A very small fish, less than 4 centimeters in length. It's a blind fish. Next slide. Yeah, some photographs of this. And so it took almost 7 years to understand the distribution of these fish, the diversity of this group of fish. So once we started, or before we started, there were very few records of this fish. Most of them were, in the form of black and white illustrations. Maybe 10 or 15 records of this fish before we started next year. So next slide, please. So, so we, in fact, we named a new species. So while studying this fish for 7 years, we understood that there were 3 named species before we started the study. And while looking at their anatomy, their morphology, their genetics, all of this combined, we understood that there could be also a new species within this group. And so we described this new species as, this fish as a new species. And in fact, we, gave the species name honoring the common public. So it's called Horaglanus populi, and named after the common public, basically because it was the common public, or the villagers, the local community members, who actually provided us with all of the specimens, all of the fish that we used for our study. So this was basically an honor to the public for their engagement, for their service, and overall help in understanding the diversity of this group. Next slide, please. So another peculiar character, or peculiar issue or challenge with this fish is that now we know that there are four different species, but and four of them have very different distribution ranges. But there's also a serious problem, because we were unable to find any differences in their morphology. So morphologically, all of these four different species are completely the same. So it's static morphology, but they're completely different genetically. They are way different genetically, and so this is a peculiar aspect of this fish which requires further studies. Why do they have no morphological changes, but very strong genetic changes? But there are also some changes in their anatomy, but not on their external body or their external character. So that's a peculiar case here. Next slide. Yeah. So the difference between these species are way huge. So it's almost 13 to 17% difference between these different species of Oroglanus. So this difference is huge. In fact, some of the fish genera or even families are differentiated at this huge genetic level. But here you have peculiar case where even species are distinguished by very strong genetic divergence. Next slide. Next slide, please. I don't know if it's a problem with my connection or the slide is not moving.
I can hear you for the most part.
Yeah, but I think the slide is, for me, the slide is stuck between this one and the next slide. So yeah,
Oh, I see. We're on the
yeah.
picture
So
of the
this was,
species.
I think I talked about the genetic difference. So that was a slide which has a phylogenetic tree and a white background.
That's right, yeah. And then the next slide is the well and the species that was found from the shower.
Yeah. So basically, the next slide is about another discovery, a very interesting discovery of a, yeah. Yes, that's the slide. So yeah, very interesting discovery of a fish that popped out of a shower in Kerala. So again, a very interesting media story. Yes, Mike.
I think the connection might have gone a little bit. I couldn't hear you
Yeah.
so
Is
easily.
it all right now?
I think so, yeah. I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah. So I was talking about this very strange fish that popped out from a shower, and so this was an interesting media story. So this is an example where this fish actually was collected from an overhead water storage tank. For example, so this was a group. So Arjun is here, and Ramya, who was unable to join. So that's the two, the team on the far right image. So basically, when we were called upon after the person in the house actually came across a very small miniature red worm-like creature that popped out of his shower onto his bathroom washroom floor. So luckily for us, we had conducted lots of awareness and education campaigns in this village, in this small town where he lives. And so he was able to identify that it was not a worm or a snake or any other creature, but it was a fish. And so he informed us, and the team actually went there. And so we knew that the water that was circulated through or distributed throughout the house came from this well in the middle, but it's a strange, very small well where it's just difficult or impossible to find out what fish lives in these in this small well. But then luckily the team went up to the terrace of the house and found out that there was another tank there, which was somewhere in the middle. So which says the water was pumped out from the well into this overhead storage tank, and then from there it was distributed into different rooms and different parts of the household. So after shining the torch, so Arjun is shining a torch into this Syntex, the overhead storage tank, where they could find a few fish wriggling in the bottom of these tanks. So this fish, next slide, please. So they were able to collect a few individuals and bring back to the lab, and we were able to identify that as a new species. So the interesting thing here is that whatever fish that you find from groundwater systems, there's almost 70 or 80% probability that it could be new to science. It could be a new species for sure. Sometimes, if you're lucky, it could also be a new genus or even a new family. For example, I showed you Enigma chana, which not only turned out to be a new species, but also a new genus and a new family. So there's very little known about these organisms. So that, as a reason, there's lots of discoveries still to be made from these kinds of environments. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this again, so any discovery from the groundwater and subterranean realm gets a lot of media attention, and this is again a local story that talked about how a fish was found from this strange looking well. Next slide, please. So after a few months of our discovery of this strange fish, this one fine day, we had none other than Leonardo DiCaprio actually talking about this fish in his social media handles. So he talked about how a strange-looking fish came out from a shower in a normal house in central Kerala, and how this turned out to be a unique new species to science, and also about the importance of citizen science, the importance of public engagement, outreach. All of this was highlighted in his story. So that almost highlighted the work that we do. The highlighted the unique biodiversity of subterranean organisms that are present in Kerala and so on. So this was a sort of very strong support for us, just not nationally but also internationally. So work became known internationally. These fish became known internationally. So more than 400,000, 500,000 people who actually engaged with this social media post. Next slide, please. And yeah, so this was all over the international press as well, because it was Leo who highlighted this strange fish, this strange way of discovering this fish, this strange habitat from where this fish was described from. So all of this helped get a lot of attention, and also an endorsement or support for citizen science and public outreach based biodiversity documentations in this part of the world. Next slide. Yeah, and the gentleman here who helped us get to this fish, or who first found out this fish on his bathroom floor, became an overnight sensation on local and international media. So he was interviewed by BBC, by Independent, and lots of local and regional and national, international media. So he's become one of our very strong citizen science advocates for subterranean and groundwater fish conservation and fish research in this part of the world. Next slide, please. Yeah. So next few slides, I'm just going to quickly talk about the different other kinds of fish that you find here. So you have two different kinds of eels with eyes. For example, this one. Next slide. Yeah, so these are fossorial eels of the genus Ophichthys. So they live in wetlands under the ground. They burrow under the mud, and they come out to feed in the night when they're accidentally caught. Next slide, please. Yeah, another photo of this. So or it looks like either a very large worm or a very a small miniature snake, but they're not either snakes or worms. They're fish. Next slide. Yeah, another fossorial eel is Ophictus fossorius. Next slide. Yeah, the second type of eels are blind eels. So this is Rectomictus, the blind whip-like eel, which is completely isolated. They live in these aquifers, groundwater systems, and they do not come into the surface water environments. So the eels with the eyes, they are fossorial. The eels without eyes, they're completely groundwater, completely isolated in subterranean systems. Next slide. Yeah, another photo of this. So it's a strange whip-like aquifer dwelling eel. No eyes, completely blind. Next slide. Yeah, another group of these eels. Next slide. Yeah, so when we started, this was all we had. So we, in fact, this project that is funded by Shoal and different other, supported by different other partners, actually helped us to generate some of the first live images, the live videos, live photos of these very strange eels. So we've got now a collection of photos, which helps us to talk to people, which helps us make people aware about these interesting fish, and also the fact that they're not worms or snakes, but in fact fish. So this project has helped us in a big way to popularize and to make people aware about the importance and the the significance of these kinds of fish that live under the ground. Next slide. Yeah, so this fish also is an example. This species is also, or this group of fish is also an example of a group of animals that have complete morphological stasis. So I told you the example of the blind catfish, which are genetically completely different, but without absolutely any morphological changes. So the same way. So this is another example of another groundwater dwelling animal. That next slide. That has huge genetic differences. So every small region has a completely genetically isolated, genetically different species of eel, but they're morphologically alike. So there's absolutely no character on the external body by which you can differentiate these different eels. So right now there are 3 species in Kerala, but it's absolutely difficult to, or just impossible, near impossible to differentiate these 3 eels looking at their morphology. But genetically they're completely distinct. Next slide. Yeah, so this is just an explanation of what I said. So there are at least 11 distinct genetic units. So genetically completely different organisms that look exactly the same, and huge genetic differences. That goes all the way until 20%. No morphological characters to distinguish them. So even if you look at the anatomy, even if you look at the number of vertebrae, which is actually used as a character to distinguish most species of fish, but here you have absolutely no differences. So they're all overlapping. So there are no morphological characters, there are no typical anatomical characters, but huge genetic differences. Next slide. Yeah, so from what we started 10 years ago, so now we have almost 300 records of this fish from different parts of the region. Next slide. Yeah, yeah, so I don't think this slide is important, just showing different species, names of different genus, species, etc. Next slide. So just quickly go through. I know I've overshot time. So all of these basic questions remain unanswered. We don't know what they eat. We don't know, how long they live. We don't know when they breed, how many eggs they produce, how they respire. Nothing about their chromosomes, their genomics, nothing about their evolutionary history, biogeography. So lots of things for young researchers, young scientists to answer. So this is a group of animals that can be studied for the next possibly 30, 40, or 50 years. Next slide. Yeah, so the last few slides of my talk. So I'm just going to talk about the threats to these interesting organisms. So now we know that there are lots of these interesting fish in these environments, but what is happening to them? There's lots of contamination on the surface that seeps in or percolates into the groundwater system. So huge threats for these organisms. Next slide. There's also a lot of laterite mining. So as I showed you in one of my introductory slides, laterites are the main habitats, the home of these kinds of organisms. So you have laterite mining, indiscriminate laterite mining that happens across the region. Next slide. India is also one of the greatest, extractors or the largest extractors of groundwater in the world. So you can see the thick red, region on the map. So that's another big threat, extraction of groundwater. Next slide. Wetlands are being reclaimed. Lots of wetlands have been lost. So these are important habitats for these organisms. So there's deterioration, reclamation, and reduction of wetlands all over the place. Next slide. This is another huge threat: is the chlorination of and disinfection of wells. So this is one of the most common ways in which wells are chlorinated and disinfected, to prevent waterborne diseases. So this is an extremely big threat for these organisms because they're very, very sensitive to all of these chemicals. Next slide. And since Arjun is here, an expert on conflicts, so here you have a strange human fish conflicts where these fish are sort of mistaken for snakes and worms and they are killed. So that's another threat, so which we can talk about in the discussion. Next slide. Yeah, so I think that's one of my last slides. So it's a difficult situation for these organisms with all of these kind of threats that are acting both on the surface and also in these, inside these habitats. So which makes life difficult for these strange looking fish. Yeah, I think that's my last slide. Yes, thank you. Yeah, sorry I've overshot time, but yeah.
No, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Rajeev. That was absolutely fascinating, as I knew it would be. It's really, really great to hear those stories and learn about the species. So just before we dive in to hear from Sanjay, I'm really keen to show a film that Shoal's very talented program officer Georgie Bull made on a trip that Georgie and I went to Western Ghats in February of this year. We're very fortunate to go and visit Rajeev and Sanjay and Arjun and learn a bit more about the good work that they're doing out there and collect some content. And from some of that media, Georgie's made this film. Um, so I'm just going to pull it up and hope that we don't have any technical hiccups with the film. If people can't hear it, please just sort of shout at me, but hopefully it will work.
As a child here in India, I had a fish tank and I had some really beautiful fishermen, like many of us do. I never thought that we need to think about where these fish came from, where their actual homes were, or the fact that I had them in the tank in my home. Much later, when I took up working with freshwater fish biodiversity conservation, I realized that many of these fish in our tanks come from very far off places. For example, some of the fish you may have come from the river right here behind me, like the beautiful Sahyadria denisoni, the denison's barb.
The idea of finding Denise here is really encouraging because this particular river stretch was dynamited before and had undergone a lot of destructive fishing practices. We see in the far side, there's a new bridge coming up. That's a real threat to this stretch. Downstream, you can see the effects of that construction. But the encouraging thing is that the people on one of the banks of this are really interested in coming together to conserve the stretch. People are willing to make that change. We are trying to encourage individuals who are influencers in the community here to work with the rest of the community so that we have a community conservation reserve identified by the people. We would like the support of people who are both within this region and people who are out there, who are hobbyists, who are interested in keeping fish in captivity. Not necessarily only those who are interested in keeping Denise, but also our friends, but fish in general. You know how difficult it is to keep fish in captivity, but how thrilling it is to. It's a spiritual experience. But in order to do so, we need spirituality back home in Denise's own place, and that is here. And for that, we need your support.
There are a lot of youngsters like me and many of the future generation who want to really work hard in this landscape and protect Denise and her friends. We want to save these really beautiful species from going extinct. But what we are waiting for is some support. So it will be really amazing if you can support our work and support the next generation of conservation leaders who are trying very hard to save Denise, save these threatened freshwater ecosystems, and also contribute towards mitigating climate crisis.
Okay, brilliant. That was a small introduction to some of the fantastic work that Sanjay does with Zoo Outreach Organization. As I mentioned at the start of this webinar, they're working hard on the Save Denise's Friends project to conserve the endangered Denison's barb and many other fishes that swim in the same waters. Sanjay, are you ready with your presentation?
Yes, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for the wonderful video. I think it says a lot, and it's a good introduction to what I'm about to talk. And hello, everyone. Please don't expect my presentation to be as colorful and beautiful as Rajeev's was. Mine's a bit dull, but I've tried to keep it a bit colorful nonetheless, thanks to Rajeev's photographs and other people who worked on this wonderful group of fish in the Western Ghats. So I'm going to share my screen and let me know if this works. Can you see my screen?
No, unfortunately, we can't.
No? Okay.
Would you like me to pull the presentation up at my side?
Yes, please. Thanks a lot.
Great.
Great. Wonderful. Okay. I'd like to, first of all, thank you all for joining this webinar. And I'd like to thank the two mics and everybody from Shoal for setting it up and inviting Rajeev, Arjun, myself, and when I say from me, it's from my team. I have Priyanka and other people from the Lively Waters team who are all responsible in getting this presentation going. So thanks a lot for inviting us. And I'd like to just start off with introducing Denise and her friends. So next slide, please. The red line torpedo barb is a very famous ornamental fish. I'm sure all of you are very aware of this, coming from the Western Ghats, the west flowing rivers of the Western Ghats. Now, the interesting thing about this fish is that apart from the importance that it has in the ornamental trade. It's one of the many different species that have been identified as a good ornamental fish from India, and quite a few of them are being exported. And quite a few hobbyists from India also keep these fish. How do we come across the importance of this fish goes back to a story that I'd like to tell you very briefly. About 15 years back, when a group of freshwater enthusiasts, including Rajeev, Nilesh, and their team, got together and helped in assessing the status of freshwater biodiversity in India, first in the Eastern Himalaya and then the Western Ghats, practically covering 90% of the Indian mainland. About 200 native endemic species of the Western Ghats were assessed, and nearly 50% of them were assessed as threatened. And mind you, this was at a time when the information on even the checklist of the Western Ghats freshwater fish was a bit tentative. And this team of enthusiasts put the list together, and worked through the taxonomy. And with the help of several people at the workshop, more than 40 of them, were able to determine the status. And so we had quite a few species for which we now have the status that is found on the IUCN Red List. And thanks to this team, that we were able to then move forward with better studies, with more concentrated efforts, more focus in understanding the fish diversity of not just Western Ghats, but of India. And today we have a thriving and growing field of fish hobbyists, enthusiasts, and taxonomists and conservationists working in the region. So the red line torpedo barb is a good representation of that particular exercise that has taken us forward from 2010 to what we know today and what we are trying to do. So the red line torpedo barb is also known by other names. Next, please. Denison's barb, and next, please. And by the popular Miss Kerala. The species occurs, as we know, in several different west-flowing rivers of the Western Ghats, especially in southern Karnataka and all of Kerala. What struck me during those assessments, and later on, when Rajeev and Nilesh and others put together the papers on phylogenetics of this particular group of this particular species, we learned that it is not one single species that we can call them, but a complex that is literally has a different conservation unit in every single west-flowing river, which makes it that the species is not one, but several of them, maybe even up to 10. We already know of 2 different species belonging to the same genus, Sahyadria denisoni, this one, and the other one is Chalacudiensis. But we now know that both of them occur in several different river systems, which means that being isolated in those river systems for millennia, for millions of years, they have their own unique genetic makeup, which makes them even more challenging. So when we did the assessments, we did the entire distribution range as one and determined that these species are threatened. But if we were to look at them now individually in each of these rivers, perhaps their endangered status would be even more critical. Next slide, please. So the assessment for these species, the red line torpedo barb, right now is for its entire distribution range across southern Karnataka and Kerala is endangered based on population decline and also restricted area of occupancy. Now, this fish lives in a very narrow range of distribution within any given river system, be it annual or perennial. And these ranges are determined by the elevation. And so I think maximum it goes up to about 500 meters from about 50 meters. So the river stretches in the west flowing rivers of the Western Ghats are pretty narrow in terms of their width and also quite restricted in terms of the length in which they flow from, say, 500 meters to about 50 meters, which makes the distribution range of these species within every river system extremely restricted. And so because of that, this species is also classified as endangered. Now, it's not just because they're restricted in their distribution, but there are a lot of threats. And the IUCN Red List lists out quite a few threats, from everything from being restricted to being fragmented, because in between the distribution ranges are fragmented from various different fishing practices, most of them being destructive. Also because of pollution and being fished out for domestic usage and for trade. And so you have not just one threat, but a series of threats acting simultaneously to classify this species as endangered. Next slide, please. So Miss Kerala also has a lookalike, which is Sahyadria chalakudeensis, which is, was earlier described from Chalakudi River, but is now known to occur in several different rivers again. Again, making this species perhaps unique to each of those river systems because of it being genetically isolated from each other. So therefore, we are looking at several different species of this particular genus. Again, this species is also classified as endangered for its population decline. Just like Miss Kerala, population declines are for various different factors as listed in the threats in the IUCN Red List. So what do we do? What are the ways of understanding where we stand with this particular group of species? Be it one, be it two, be it many, they all are highly threatened. They're threatened not because of one reason, they're threatened because of various different reasons. While we scientists understand that they are threatened, it's very rare for us to understand the people living in those areas that the fish occur, to understand their perceptions of the fish, to understand their knowledge or opinions about the fish. So when we started off working with shoal, with the Kerala University for Fisheries and Ocean Studies, Zoo Outreach Organization set out a team of people to actually work in the landscape to understand the distribution of the species, where it occurs, where it used to occur, where it still occurs. All this not from just first-hand information, but also in getting information from the people living in those areas. Next slide, please. We also understood several different things with respect to Denison's barb. It's that the Denison's barb is a good representation of the very many different species that are endemic to the west flowing rivers of the Western Ghats. There are quite a few, anywhere from, again, 60 to 100 species, maybe more, counting the number of species that are newly described. So the numbers is anybody's guess, but we know of the species that are described, at least 60 of them share the same space of Denise barb. And this is just one example of a recent paper published by Anwar Ali, who's again Rajeev's colleague, and his colleagues from the Kalar stream of the Achankoil river in Kerala, where they recorded 35 species of 27 genera from 13 families of fish that exist along with Denison's barb. Next slide, please. So in order to understand people's perception, our team has gone out, a team consisting of Siddharthan from Kerala and Kaushik from Karnataka, both of them knowing the local languages, have gone to various different areas and have started recording the presence and absence of this particular species. I've just represented a few areas that they've been to, just in order to analyze and provide you with some knowledge of what kind of information we're gathering and what we intend to do. So this is just of 5 different river stretches, all the west flowing rivers of the Western Ghats, the Payaswani or Chandragiri, which flows from Karnataka into Kerala, and then others, the Valapatnam, Bavli, Chaliyar, and Periyar rivers, just as examples. Next, please. So taking one river stretch, Chaliyar River, they've been able to find the species in 9 different locations. They've been able to talk to people in those 9 different locations and understand what their perceptions are. Next, please. Similarly, between Karnataka and Kerala, they've been able to visit several different locations in this particular river stretch. Again, from what I understand, this particular river has one of the most colorful denizens bar. Next, please. And also in Periyar river stretch from the famous Periyar Tiger Reserve, but this is downstream from there where the species occurs. Again, they've found the species in different stretches of the river. They've not found it in other stretches, but they've been talking to several people in the communities. Next, please. One other river as an example in Valapatnam. Next, please. And they've even found certain streams feeding into the Bavli River with populations that were never known before. So it's some of these studies actually indicate how little we know, even of this highly popular species, at least what scientists know of this highly popular species. So we are getting to know more and more. And as we did this survey, next please. We surveyed 152 respondents from 59 locations from different villages who obviously have various different local names for this fish. So I just called out 3 English names, and there are several, not just this. These are all mostly Malayalam names, but there are several more names for this particular fish. And as we cover more area, we'll also be documenting the names of this fish in local parlance. Next, please. So when we sort of interviewed them, of the 159 species, people, only 106 knew about this fish, and they knew about their occurrence. They knew about their, the threats. They knew what was affecting them. Some of them knew their historical distribution, and some of them said that they found only in a few locations. Many of them thought that this species had gone extinct in their own areas, but they were surprised to hear that it is still found in certain pockets. Certain others did not believe that it existed at all. Certain others believed that it existed quite a few years back and has been overfished and has gone extinct or locally extirpated from their regions. So we got a lot of different responses from people. Next, please. When we asked about the threats, quite a few people came up with threats like overfishing, floods, landslides, which have started new, dynamite fishing, and dams as some of the threats for this species and for her friends. Next, please. When they were pressed for more information, they provided greater detail in terms of what they thought were the threats in terms of just fishing this particular species. The kinds of nets they use, some of them use very small grid nets, which means that fish of every size is caught, which means that they've been documenting declines in their fish populations. Some of them have used poisons. Dynamite fishing is really rampant, and electrofishing also is becoming more and more rampant. So a lot of people also think that the fish have been exported in the past, and some of them continue to know that the Denisoni is still caught for trade. Although many of them feel that the fish is no longer exported. The number of people who still think that the fish used to be caught in the past go from anywhere from as long as 15 years back to about 2 to 3 years back. So we have had several people from various different age classes, different experiences, and different stretches of the rivers who have very differing opinions of what the status of this species is and how it's been exploited or used and for what purposes. Next, please. And so people have their own perceptions. Many of them feel that there is no change. Nearly 40% of them feel that there's no change to the river or its biodiversity. They feel that it's business as usual. Many of them have not even bothered to understand if there is a change. It's the new normal, especially of the youngsters. They think that that's how the river has been ever since. And growing up now, what they see is the new norm, but for them, it's normal. And so they don't think that there's any change. But other people who have observed changes in the river attribute it to various different things, from dams to pollution, landslides, and reducing quantity of water and increasing sand and silt. And many of them also talk about the vagaries of the climate and the climate crisis itself. So people's perceptions about the changes in the river is rather dependent on how observant they are, what age group they are, and how they utilize the river. Next, please. So we've received several different messages from the locals. And as we analyze, thanks to Trisha, who's been analyzing all the qualitative and the quantitative data, we will be getting a more evidence to understand how people view the river systems, the landscape, and the biodiversity it has. Next, please. But there are a lot of challenges. One biggest challenge that I'm told is that there is lack of knowledge. Many people have come in and settled from outside, have absolutely no information. The younger generation lack the knowledge that the older generation have of the occurrence of this particular species. Many of them don't even know about the Miss Kerala. Some of them are completely indifferent to what's happening. They have no connection to the river. People who used to use the river as a source of water now no longer are connected to the river because they get water from other channels being they get water that is distributed, which means that their dependence on the river has reduced, therefore making them less connected to the river itself. Those who feel there are changes happening to the river also feel helpless because the policies are not keeping up with what is required. We had a scare in terms of the policymakers wanting to include Denise and many of her friends on the Wildlife Protection Act. Now, this would mean that a lot of these species would be protected from being fished. Now, this would be a direct harm to these species because a lot of the people who fish these rivers do not necessarily fish the species or do not specifically fish for a species. When they cast their nets, everything comes along. So, which means that the challenges in implementing the Wildlife Protection Act is really, really difficult. So, fortunately, none of these species got included on the Wildlife Protection Act, which means that it's our responsibility to actually develop a conservation scenario and a conservation policy to understand what the exploitations are, to understand how the river stretches are being treated, and to come up with a holistic plan. Next, please. Fortunately, in our understanding of what people's perceptions are, many of them or some of them think that it is too late to conserve the fish, and many of them feel that they are already dead. Or some of them feel that the rivers are too big to be conserved. But what we do know, and in interacting with people, we know that there are case studies where there are groups in different river stretches who are either into turtle conservation or into different kinds of ecotourism, which they're also willing to include the freshwater fish and Denise and her friends into their conservation scenarios. So we are now identifying several different such communities from different parts of the river to be able to promote a more holistic and participatory conservation. And so while our studies are going on, there is some hope that we will actually come up with practical solutions to this issue. And thanks to some people along some stretches of the rivers who are willing to work together. And so our entire focus from Zoo Outreach Organization and from the perspective of Shoal is to have a people-centric approach and an inclusive approach to conserving Denise and her friends. Next, please. So we welcome you all to please support this cause, because as we said in the video, and as I reiterate now, it's very important that Denise and her friends find the spiritual help that is not found in just aquariums and homes, but in the wild. We need that because unless people from around the world who keep Denise and her friends and people from within India who know about Denise and her friends come together, it's very difficult to conserve. We have people and communities who are willing to come together and conserve. So all they require is our help in terms of understanding, in terms of the knowledge, in terms of the science, and in terms of putting forth a conservation action that is holistic, democratic, and all inclusive. Next, please. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's I mean, it was a real privilege for Georgia and I to be able to go out and visit you earlier this year, and fantastic to see the work that you're doing. So I'm just gonna shut this down. Sorry. Um, and get an insight into some of the great work that you've been doing. With a lot of the funding actually came from the generosity of practical fish keeping readers in the UK. Practical fish keeping is the sort of um, the go-to magazine for aquarium hobbyists in the UK, and they were very supportive about helping us advertise through them and write some articles for the magazine. And we ran a campaign, a fundraising campaign through that, which was really instrumental in helping generate some of the funding. for the project. And obviously through that, you were able to do some really good community engagement work and the population mapping work that you just discussed in your presentation, and the threats assessment. But like you just said, to really kick on and safeguard the future of the project, it really does come down to funding. So, with that in mind, sorry, Sanjay, have you got any suggestions for how we can better engage people and fundraise, particularly businesses, to generate some more funding? I mean, we're working at Shoal. It's sort of a big part of our job to do that for this project, and we're working hard to do that. And as I say, Practical Fish Keeping have been very supportive with that. But it would be interesting to hear any insights from you, actually, also from anybody on the chat as well, who may have some insights on how we could better leverage the aquarium hobby, particularly businesses, to try and generate some funding.
Yeah, I think this is a very important aspect of this all. Hobbyists and aquarium trade in India is just building up, and we're trying to find that common ground where we can help. We can get the support of the aquarists in the country. But having established itself already in other parts of the world, I think it's very important that the aquarists and the fish keepers who have actually been supportive of this, perhaps reach out and see if we can come up with certain ways of and strategies of getting more people involved. Frankly, I would like to understand more from other people who are in this business. So while I can express my interest in this regard, I think it's better off to hear from people who are more knowledgeable about this.
Yeah, thank you. I very much welcome people in the chat to send us over any suggestions, either in the chat box or to info@shoalconservation.org. We have ideas and we're working hard on generating the funding as well, but it's always good to widen the net and get more sort of inspiration and ideas and different angles that perhaps we haven't thought of before. But we are always very keen to work closely with the aquarium hobby. So I just thought of a question when I was watching Rajeev's talk. There was that photo of Arjun stuck down in a aquifer underground with one little torch. It looks like my idea of absolute hell. Um, Arjun, when you're down there, are those tunnels mapped? Do people sort of do you know what you're getting yourself into, and do you know how you get yourself out if things go wrong?
That's something very risky task that I took, and now I realize how much risk I took. If the torch is switched off, there is no way out. But in search of fish and to find that for those fascinating fishes, we took that risk and explored those caves.
Oh wow! So you're really sort of at the forefront of subterranean exploration to find out how these fishes. I mean, it sounds adventurous and exciting, but also completely terrifying.
Can I add something, Mike?
Exactly.
Please do.
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges that we have is that the aquifer systems in this part of the world are not mapped. So there's no, high resolution maps of aquifer systems that we can access, and so that has, become a big sort of challenge, because even just not to understand survey or sampling sites, but also to understand, genetic connectivity and so on. We need maps. So I know there are lots of institutions and organizations working on groundwater dependent stuff in the country, but and there are also aquifer maps for different states in India, but unfortunately not Kerala. So that is a big knowledge gap that we need to address. Again, this is not the work of biologists, but it is an interdisciplinary team that would be required. For example, hydrologists, geologists, biologists. So a combination of all of this. Yeah, I just wanted to add this. I think that was one of your first question to Arjun, whether we know something about the ecosystems. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, it really is kind of pretty out there exploratory stuff that it's such a burgeoning early field of ichthyology that there's obviously so many stakeholders that sort of need to get involved with mapping it further and understanding it more. Um, just following on from that a little bit, Rajeev, what governance mechanisms or policies would you advocate for to protect the subterranean systems?
That's a difficult question to answer. So there's some challenges and limitations. For example, all of these habitats or all of these systems are embedded within human-dominated landscapes. So unlike the habitats that to an extent that Sanjay showed, some of these rivers are in protected areas. Some of these rivers are not within human-dominated landscapes. But if you look at possibly 100 or uh, maybe 90-95% of all of these subterranean habitats are within a mosaic of human dominated landscapes. So it can be houses, households, it can be agriculture land, privately owned agriculture land, paddy fields, garden channels, all of this. So it's basically all of this is private land, private landscape. And so strategizing conservation and management in these systems is extremely difficult because it is unlike any other system. It's easy to have conservation plans in a protected area or even in a forest area or things like that. But it's very difficult to enforce those kinds of things here. For example, the Indian Wildlife Protection Act that Sanjay briefly touched upon has included the golem snakehead or the dragon snakehead, Enigma channa golem, into its list, which means it's under the Schedule 2 of the Indian Wildlife Protection Act, which means it is not possible to collect and trade them or keep them in captivity. But then the big challenge is how do you enforce such a law in a landscape which is completely human dominated. So it's easy to enforce a law like that inside a forest area or a protected area or a reserve forest and all of those kinds of habitats. But when you have a fish that is within a private owned land, be it an agricultural land or a well or a household, a backyard, garden pool, how do you enforce such a legislation? So it comes with its own challenges, and this is something that we still haven't got to a grip with. Working on these systems would require a institutional, sort of disciplinary approach that involves stakeholders from the agriculture department, from the forest department, who are the enforcers of this law, the the households in itself, the private landowners, the local communities. So it's a completely different ball game that we still haven't got an idea how to work around with.
Right, thank you. There's a few questions coming in on the chat. Rennie Thomas says, "Hello, I'm from Ohio, from the Miami University, Oxford, and works on the groundwater dependent ecosystems with a focus on springs and wetlands." Rennie's had to jump off the webinar. They're unable to make the rest of it, but they have asked quite a few good questions. So one of them is excellent presentation. I loved all the photos of species that are dependent on groundwater. I'm curious to know from Dr. Raghavan, is there a central database for Western Ghats Mountains on organisms that are dependent on groundwater? central database for the mountains of the Western Ghats on organisms that are dependent on groundwater, and they say that they work on lateritic aquifers of Maharashtra. Thank you.
Yes, so I think that's for me. Basically, not yet. So there's no central database or central hub where you get, I mean, a digital hub where you get all of this information in one place. So it's basically, scientific publications that have to be compiled. Uh, so yeah, I don't think there's any sort of websites or databases, which have information on subterranean stuff. So, but there's one globally. There's this website that's called cavefish.org.uk, which is a highly dynamic and updated website that has all of the information on the world's subterranean and groundwater fish. But again, that's more of a global database with everything to do with subterranean fish around the world. So from the Western Ghats perspective or from a southern Indian perspective, there are no databases as yet. Possibly that's something that we are interested to work on as part of all the findings that we've made and all the research results and output that has been coming out of this multi-year project. So yes, so possibly down the line, maybe 1 or 2 years down the line, we would come up with such a database. But as of today, I don't think there are any in existence.
Okay, thank you. And following on from that, in light of these discoveries, what are the conservation efforts in lateritic areas? Not to dismiss groundwater dependence of the local communities for their daily needs. I think that's probably
As I
all.
said, again, most of this is open access. So this is in continuation with the answer that I gave for the first question regarding all of this happening in human-dominated landscape. So I don't know what kinds of conservation efforts would be successful. But again, everything depends on the public who are connected with these systems. So it's basically, to start with, is education and awareness, talking to them, uh, letting them, making them understand the importance of these organisms, their sort of evolutionary importance, their ecosystem importance, and all that, and slowly sort of bringing in a sense of ownership and stewardship for these kinds of habitats and species. So that's the only way that we can think of, rather than having a top-down approach where you have lots of very strict rules, which would make life extremely difficult for these local communities, because one, all of these habitats are interconnected with systems from where they take water, not only for drinking but also for different household uses. So making them stop taking water from a well just because there's a fish in that system is not a sort of pragmatic solution to this. So conventional conservation approaches won't work. So it has to be localized, specific location specific management and conservation plans that need to be adopted.
Thank you, Rajeev. And Roshni Arora asks, Roshni's from the Nature Conservancy, and Rajeev, is there any information on the ecological function of the subterranean fishes?
Hi, Roshni. So, yeah, she's a good friend of mine. So, one, as I said, I had a slide which showed that there are more questions than answers. Lots of things unknown regarding these, species, right from their basic life history, ecology, population, their physiology, anything to do with that. So, all what we know till date is basically, names of these species, where they are found, what they look like, etc. So, I don't think there's anything that has been done on the sort of ecological functions or ecosystem services, but I can tell you that at least they basically perform a function of a prey predator sort of dynamics in the system, because they're these small fish, the miniature loaches or the miniature catfish, could be prey for larger aquifer dwelling fish like the golem snakehead, for example. So that relationship is always there. Apart from that, I think one of the important functions would be the maintenance of water quality, or rather, as indicators of water quality, because that's a message that we provide to the local communities, to the public who are connected with these systems, because these are fish that have survived in these groundwater systems, in these aquifers for millions of years. And these animals would be the first to actually detect and understand if there's any small changes in their water quality. For example, if there's a rise in pH, or a reduction in oxygen levels, any of those kinds of parameters, whether it's whether it increases or decreases due to pollution or due to other reasons, this fish would be the first to actually detect them much before we do. So they could serve as an excellent indicator of environmental quality, basically water quality. Showing that the wells or the aquifers where you have abundant subterranean or groundwater fish are more of habitats that have extremely good water quality. So that's an indirect sort of indicator of water quality. So I think other than that, I don't think there's much done or much known about the ecological functions or ecological role of these interesting fish. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And just while we're on the subterranean fishes, Aravand Manoj, who I think you guys know, is asks, how long do these subterranean catfishes stay alive when they're out in the light, sorry, such as an aquarium?
Oh, that depends, because basically they do. I mean, they do not really like light, because they shy away from light. So we do not force them to live in under bright light conditions. So we always have some hideouts or some places inside the aquarium or the tanks to for them to hide. But uh, you know I don't have a direct answer to give Arvind regarding how many hours or days it can survive in bright light or in natural light. But we've seen that it's not too difficult to keep them in natural light. Although they look out for hideouts, but they do survive moderately okay in natural light conditions. But they do better in darker environments. So yeah, possibly that's an experiment where we will have to sacrifice a lot of fish to understand their response to different light intensities and natural light conditions, dark conditions, etc. So yeah.
Thank you. This is a really great question from Andy Patel. Andy, great to see you again. He's an aquarist from the UK and a good friend of Shoal. Andy asks, are there any breeding projects in the Western Ghats to supply the aquarium trade without further endangering wild populations? That'll be for the Denison's barb and also for any other species as well. Yeah, Sanjay, are there any breeding projects in and around the Western Ghats or further afield?
There are a couple of them, and they have been, in fact, supplying a lot of local aquarists with locally bred denizens barb. But again, there are just very few and far between. I think much of the trade happens from Indonesia and somewhere else that goes out, and people here are now building up to supply more aquarium-bred fish. Having said that, there's also still a huge demand from certain stretches for a wild-caught Denise. So that's something that we are learning. So yeah, it's hopefully more people or people who keep them in captivity and breed them in captivity become more self-sufficient and are able to supply.
And are there any sort of examples of policy change in conservation in your lifetime, in your experience as a conservationist? Are there policy changes that have shown that a species that was, formerly or currently sort of a bit exploited, that gets much better controlled.
Well, I mean, yeah, we have some of the charismatic larger mammals and terrestrial vertebrates that have faced that in the past, and the kind of prominence that they get and the kind of importance they get is very different from the kind of importance, say, freshwater fish get. And so, the way they've been, a lot of the policy changes that have been formulated are for these large charismatic vertebrates. Unfortunately, some of them are not applicable to the freshwater realm. Like I said, having freshwater fish, and like Rajeev said, having the golem protected in the Wildlife Protection Act does not really make sense, because it's very difficult to implement the act itself on the ground. And so, we need to start looking at, other than just protection, we need to start looking at conservation on the whole. And while protection is one part of it, we need to start developing a more holistic conservation game. And this has to come from everybody, not necessarily just from the top down, from the government itself. And so I think it's best that we all work together, bottoms up, and see that it really works for the freshwater realm.
And leading on from that, Sanjay, yourself and Zoo Outreach Organization have been very progressive about the community engagement strategies you use. And when I visited you out in February, you showed me some amazing sort of graphic novels and posters and comics and signs that you guys had made to help engage the community about some of the conservation issues and work being done. What forms of public engagement or citizen science, this is to all three of you, have been most impactful in revealing the biodiversity of the Western Ghats, the subterranean fish and the non-subterranean fish diversity, and how can these techniques be scaled?
As Rajeev said, I think the subterranean fish is really leading the charge there in terms of public participation, in terms of citizen science. I think we need more for non-subterranean fish diversity also. And I think there are people who are out there who are interested, who are getting into this field, and they keep popping up. And in fact, a lot of information is put out on the social media. One of the biggest challenges is that we do not have one platform or medium like eBird or one of those platforms where everybody provides the data. And there's also experts who can ratify the information and move on from there. So that's something that needs to be built up. And I think with the subterranean and perhaps even with the ornamental fish trade, I think it's a potent combination to have citizen science build up just the way eBird and other such platforms are built up. Rajeev, what do you think?
Yeah, Sanjay. Yeah, so I think you've addressed most of it, but I think what I wanted to say is, so basically, the freshwater community has this challenge which is associated with the perception of freshwater fish, because unlike other terrestrial and even to an extent marine organisms, people are not connected. Common public are not connected to freshwater species, their conservation issues, and so on. So basically, the biggest problem we have is the lack of visuals. Images can help a lot in in connecting kids, connecting people basically to conservation issues. And since these fish live in environments that cannot really be photographed as brilliantly as marine or terrestrial systems, so historically there has been a lack of connections. So, for example, there are lots of amateur naturalists, or school going kids, college going kids who are addicted to say butterfly watching or dragonfly watching, or photographing birds, photographing amphibians. They're all much more easier to do than photographing fish in the wild. You need to have the right specific equipments, and also one needs to be lucky with the environment, because most of our environments in the Western Ghats are either murky, they're turbid, torrential streams. So photographing fish, or videographing fish in the wild is a big challenge. So I think that is also one reason why there has been a lack of efforts, a lack of proactive community trying to understand, study, and conserve freshwater fish. But slowly it's changing. For example, if you look at photographs of fish that were taken, say 15 or 20 years back, it was all dead fish. All of the fish photographs from the Western Ghats, showcasing Western Ghats fish, would all be dead fish, either kept on a paper, or a leaf, or or on a hand, or things like that. But slowly it's changing. So there are lots of people. So Arvind is one person here. There's Beta. There's lots of other fish enthusiasts, aquarists, hobbyists, who have been excellent ambassadors, excellent supporters of freshwater conservation. The way that they photographed and made all of these photographs for the first time. Many of these fish were photographed for the first time ever, and made available to the public through social media handles, websites, and so on. So I think it's slowly changing, but it takes an effort, and that too from different sectors, just not scientists, but also, as I said, hobbyists, civil society enthusiasts, breeders, kids who keep fish, everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And Arjun, I just wondered if you got any kind of further insights into that as well through your work at the Kerala Forests and Wildlife Department. A huge part of what you do is engaging the public with kind of human-wildlife conflict, right? Have you got any insights in how to better engage the members of the public with conservation issues?
Yeah, actually, as Rajeev told about a fish we named for Aglanis populi to honor the public, and such incidents will give a lot of popularity among the public, and that help us to reach a lot of people in Kerala. And after that, we are getting a lot of information from the public that they have this particular fish in their well. So like that, we are getting samples, and so slowly we envision to make all these informers as citizen conservationists, and make all these subterranean habitats what conservation priority site or heritage site of subterranean fish fauna, conserving these species. And we also promote these subterranean fishes as the indicators of the quality of water. So like that, people tolerance is getting increased rather than so whenever they see these fishes in this well, they normally think that this is a worm or a poisonous snake. So we provide awareness and convince them as these are all fishes, and they are the indicators of a good quality of your water. So like that, we are enhancing their tolerance and make them as citizen conservators.
Brilliant, thank you. And this is the last question I've got for you, and then we're just coming up to the hour, so it's perfect timing. But obviously both the subterranean and the surface dwelling fishes face so many different threats, whether it's sand mining, pollution, agricultural runoff, groundwater over extraction, all the rest of it, lots and lots of different threats. Which conservation interventions, whether it's policy enforcement, habitat restoration, captive assurance populations, which of those interventions and any other proving most urgent and most feasible for the fishes?
Sanjay, you want to take it first, or?
Go ahead, Rajeev.
Yeah, so I think it's so for me it's basically involving communities, because communities are the key to sort of having a successful plan. Because if you take subterranean fish or even dennis or other river dwelling fish, most of these are connected to habitats that are very close to human habitations, and to enforce a completely top-down conservation approach, I don't think that would work in the first place. They would be resented by the communities, because basically the whole concept of conserving fish and managing fisheries is a big challenge. It's a difficult balancing act, because fish has always been viewed as a component or as a contributor to food security and livelihoods. So there is always this human angle, a human dimension to the whole story, that you cannot take humans out of fish conservation, fish management, I mean, fisheries management agenda. So I think it's always working with the people, trying to find a balance between what they require and what they can do to help save this fish. So that's the key. So according to me, people are the key, and it's not policymakers or the government machinery sitting completely somewhere disconnected from these systems.
I agree with Rajeev. Yeah, it's the people. As long as we involve them and get them on board. Uh, First of all, empower them with the knowledge, because like I said, one of the biggest issues, the disconnect, is the generation gap, the loss of interest, the younger generations normalizing what they see around them. All that is adding to the problems. And so unless we sort of empower them with the information, with the knowledge, we'll never get them to be part of this. So it's very important that the communities themselves come forward, and with the ecological information, with the diversity information and everything, we've seen in various different parts of the country where people themselves come forward with brilliant ideas. And because it's coming from them, the conservation will actually work. And a top-down approach, a policy-driven approach, will not work with communities. Not really for the fish, at least. I would also say, but the policy-driven approach is very important for other players, other stakeholders, say like the fisheries department, which unfortunately is now releasing denisoni in the east flowing rivers of the Western Ghats. And there are several different populations of denis that are now seen in Kabini and in Kaveri River basin, which is not a good thing, because evolutionarily they only are restricted to the west flowing rivers. And for want of just conserving a species without understanding the biogeography, without understanding the evolutionary history, without understanding anything, if the arm of the government is doing something that is not really conducive for the fish, or for other biodiversity within those evolutionarily distinct regions, I think it's actually going to be a really dangerous situation for not just the species, but also species occurring there. So I think, yeah, policy decisions have to happen, but in certain places, not with the communities. But communities are the main people who, the stakeholders, the communities are the main people who have to drive conservation.
Well, what a positive note to end on. The power really is with the people, and communities are absolutely key to conservation. Yeah, what an empowering message to kind of let people, well, an empowering message for people to understand that they can really move the needle on species and really make a positive difference. So Sanjay, Rajeev, Arjun, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I can say from experience, the Western Ghats really is a very magical place, and we should keep it that way so that future generations can also enjoy its wild biodiversity. Thank you everybody for joining us as well today. And if you'd like to contribute to the project, please do head over to shoalconservation.org where you'll find the donation link. And if anybody in the audience thinks of any further questions that weren't answered during the webinar, please email them to info@shoalconservation.org and I'll forward them on to the panelists and get back to you very soon. The webinar has been recorded, so you can point your friends in its direction if you think they'd be interested in watching it. And always feel free to share over social media with Shoal tagged so that we can repost. Also, if you haven't already, please sign up for Shoal's monthly newsletter over at the website, which will keep you updated on news from the wider world of freshwater species conservation. And go give us a follow on Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn. It really does help with that engagement. The next webinar in this series isn't currently confirmed, but it will likely be in November. We're hoping that it will be about mahseer conservation, so also following along from the Western Ghats theme. So stay tuned to hear more about that. And yeah, thank you everybody once again, and I really hope you enjoy the rest of your day and hope to see you next time.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you everyone for listening in. And let's keep this going. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye guys. Bye.